Are you having a hard time getting your sausage to snap? You've come to the right place because today's episode is snap-centric, and I'm going to be covering every tip and every trick that I know so that the next time you make sausages, you can get that nice snappy bite. Today, we're going to be making one of my all-time favorite sausages, the Texas Hot Links, and I'll put a recipe link in the description box below in case you want to make it for yourself. We're going to cover every single step from beginning to end, but this time we're going to approach each step and how it relates to the snappability of your sausage. Are you ready? Let's get started. First things first, high quality natural casings. I like using hog. Sheep also works great, and you want to make sure they're grade A casings. These come from the sausage maker, and if you want to increase the chance of getting a really nice snap on your sausage, stick to casings under 35 millimeter, both hog or sheep. Those are going to give you nice thin walls and a nice snappy bite. So let's go ahead and prepare these casings. These are 29-32 millimeter, probably the most popular choice and my personal favorite. And all we did was separate them into 5 strands at this point. I'm going to show you what I do to get these ready, and I'm also going to explain how what we're going to be doing influences the snap. Let's go ahead and start by rinsing these off. Casings are usually packed in salt or in some sort of a salt brine. And so what we want to do is get the salt out from the inside of the casing as well as from the outside of the casing. So I'm going to start just by rinsing the outside of the casing just to remove any excess salt from the outer part of it. And notice I've got 2 of my fingers inside the casing, and we're going to use that as a point to fill that casing up with water. And that's going to rinse the inside out. But it's not only going to rinse the inside out, it's also going to stretch it out. Stretching your casing out is going to allow the wall of that casing to open up to its maximum capacity, which is going to help you stuff it a whole lot easier. And it's also going to help that casing to become a whole lot more tender, which is the first step in achieving a proper snap. So I'm just going to take my fingers, pinch that casing, and run it through to get rid of any air pockets, any excess water that's in that casing. We want it completely empty by the time it's done, and it should feel very well hydrated by the time you're finished. This is exactly what it should look like. We've got 5 cups of fresh water, and I like to separate the casings. It just makes it easier later. And what I'm going to do is add a half a teaspoon of baking soda for every 2 cups of water. That baking soda is going to alkalinize the water. And this is just regular baking soda you can get at the grocery store, nothing special. And what that is going to do is that's going to help make your casing very slippery. It's going to be easier to put on your horn, easier to stuff. It's going to make getting rid of any knots super, super easy, and will greatly reduce casing blowout. So our water is treated. That baking soda is going to do its thing. And a lot of people don't realize this, but it's the actual water itself that's going to help tenderize the casing. And what I would recommend is a 12-hour soak. I know it takes a little bit of planning, but trust me, you're going to love the results. So we're going to put those casings, 1 in each one of those containers, and that's going to go into my refrigerator overnight. That is it. Just that simple. Okay, so before these go into the fridge, let me just show you something about these casings. These are very, very translucent. When I open them up, you can see right through them just about. You see my fingers? These types of casings are going to give you the best possible chance for an amazing snap. Everything looks great. We're going to go ahead and take these and place them into the refrigerator overnight. For 12 hours, they're going to soak. Tomorrow, we'll prepare the meat. All right, let's talk about the meat. We're going to be making 30 pounds of Texas Hot Link. We've got pork shoulder and pork fat. And the very first thing you want to do, the very first thing you should always do is pre-freeze your meat. I'm talking 32 to 34 degrees Fahrenheit at the minimum. That's going to give you the best grind. I would never recommend taking meat directly out of the fridge and grinding it because you're more than likely going to end up smearing the fat. And what happens when you smear the fat is a very thin layer of fat gets between the meat and the casing, and that keeps the meat from bonding to the casing properly. So always pre-freeze your meat. I'm going to do just a quick temperature check here before and after. This just came out of the fridge. It's been sitting on my counter for probably 10-15 minutes, and we're in the low 50s. This is an unacceptable temperature to grind your meat. You're going to end up with a disaster of a sausage if you try to grind this at this temperature. Trust me when I tell you that. So let's go ahead and pop this into the freezer for about 45 minutes, and this is what it now looks like 45 minutes later. Now, when you're pre-freezing meat, the more you have in the tray, you know, the taller your meat stack is, the longer it's going to take to pre-freeze. So it's better to spread it out as best you can if you have that capability. Otherwise, you're just going to have to leave it in there a little bit longer. The temperature of the fat looks like it is
Exactly where we want it. 32, 31.5, absolutely perfect. This is going to give us a great grind. Let's take another temperature of the meat. We're in the low 30s. This is where I like to grind at typically. 30 to 34 is kind of my preferred, temperature of grinding. That's what I would recommend. And you are usually never going to have a problem if you stick within those temperatures. All right, so this is perfect. Our next step is to grind the meat. Let's talk about it. When it comes to grinding your meat, you could use whatever size grinder you have. Even a KitchenAid grinder would work fine. It doesn't matter the plate you use, whether it's coarse, medium, or fine. What matters is how sharp they are. And when you rub your fingers across the holes, they should feel almost like they're catching. If they feel super smooth, like rounded edges, then your plate is more than likely dull and you're going to either want to sharpen it or grab a new one. If you try to grind your meat with a dull plate or knife, you will absolutely destroy your sausage. It will smear the fat. It's going to ruin the texture. You're going to end up with this crazy cardboard-like texture, and the snappiness will be the least of your concerns. Trust me. So sharp plate and sharp knife. If you need a refresher on how to sharpen that piece of equipment, check out the link in the top right-hand corner. We go over it in full detail. All right, let's assemble our grinder head. This is a number 32 grinder from the Sausage Maker. It's part of their Pro Series line. There'll be a link in the description box, but remember, the size grinder that you use does not matter. You can still get a snappy sausage no matter what size you use. All right, our meat is ready. Let's get it into the grinder and grind away. And our grind looks beautiful. The two words I would use to describe this grind is loose and pebbly. It's not greasy, it's not bound together, and this is because our meat was properly chilled before we put it in the grinder. If you properly chill your meat and your blades are sharp, yours will be loose and pebbly as well. This is going to go back into the freezer so that we could re-chill it before we mix it, very important, while we look at our spices. Now, the spice profile that you use is mostly irrelevant. This is the basic spice profile mix for the Texas Hot Links. What I would recommend, though, especially if you're having a hard time getting a nice snap, is adding some sort of a binder. The white powder you see on top is potato starch, and it really doesn't matter what binder you use. You could use high-temp, non-fat dry milk. You could use nutritional yeast. You could use a couple eggs, maybe even some soy protein isolate. Like I said, it really doesn't matter. But if you use a binder, it's going to increase the water holding capacity of your sausage, and it's also going to give you a really nice sticky batter, which is going to help that meat come together, and it's going to help that casing stick to that meat a lot better. And so adding a binder is a great crutch and will increase your chance of getting a nice snappy sausage. But I do want to say that adding a binder is completely optional. You don't technically need it to get a nice snap. All right, so we've got that part covered. Let's now look at the liquids. The liquid that you add to your sausage is also very important. This is going to help loosen up your batter. It's going to make it nice and sticky, and that's what we want. And the amount of liquid that you add is completely relative to whether or not you add a binder. If you are not going to add a binder, then I would stick to about 5% liquid. If you are going to add a binder, like in this case we added potato starch, you can go all the way up to 10% liquid, which is going to make it even stickier. And a sticky batter is a snap's best friend. Let's move on. Our meat has been re-chilled, and this is a step that's most often overlooked. We want to make sure that that temperature is between 30 and 34 degrees Fahrenheit before we mix it. The act of mixing is in and of itself going to generate friction, which is going to naturally increase the temperature of our meat. And we just want to make sure that it stays nice and cold so we don't smear the fat or ruin the texture of the sausage. We have our 50-pound meat mixer from the Sausage Maker, and although you don't see this in many of my videos because I normally make small batches, I just want to say I absolutely love this meat mixer. This is a great way to mix large batches of meat. It keeps the meat nice and cold, and as you can see, I've got it connected to my grinder, which turns it into an automatic mixer, which is absolutely brilliant. So we're just adding our dry spices. I'm now going to come back with the liquid ingredient. And when it comes to mixing in your ingredients, you can technically combine both the liquid and the dry ingredients and just mix it in all at once. You're going to get the same results. Not a problem. And notice as we add the liquid ingredient, our mixture becomes a lot tackier, a lot stickier, It's going to completely change in texture, as you can see right here. And this is what we're looking for. We want a very sticky, a very tacky meat batter. In most of our sausage making videos, we talk about how the batter is going to stick to your hand if you grab a handful of it, just like that. And that's the best way to describe it. I mean, I wish I could tell you, you should mix it for 5 minutes. But the truth is, each batter, each recipe is going to be completely different. And so you have to mix it until it gets nice and sticky. And that stickiness is going to help bind all those ingredients together. But it's also going to help that casing adhere to the meat, which is one of the key components of having a nice snappy sausage. So let's go ahead and get this out of that mixer and get it into a casing as we are moving right along. This next step is going to get us one step closer to the snap. Trust me when I tell you, you're going to love the end result of this particular sausage. We are using a dedicated sausage stuffer, and you want to make sure that you pick the right horn for the size casing that you're using. We're using 29-32 millimeter casing, so we're going to be using a 3/4 inch stuffing horn. That's what this size is right here. If the horn you're using is too big, you could cause your casing to rupture. It's also going to be quite difficult to fill. And if your horn is too small, you can create too many air pockets in your casing itself. So just try to get a horn that's slightly under the size of the casing that you're using. Now it's time to get our very sticky meat into that hopper. And what we want to do is we want to minimize the amount of air pockets that are in this batter. And so we're going to do that by grabbing small handfuls and just slamming them down. And that's just going to compress any of that air pocket out. The reason we don't want air pockets in our batter is because those air pockets are going to keep the sausage casing from adhering properly to the meat. It's also going to collect little pools of rendered fat. And rendered fat inside your sausage casing can pose problems. Okay, just remember that. All right, so we're done stuffing this. And I do want to say this one thing before we move on. If you're not using a dedicated sausage stuffer, and it doesn't matter what size, if you're using something like a KitchenAid stuffer or a grinder with a stuffer attachment, if you're going to be using that, then I would recommend to re-chill your meat down to also 30, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, because those are not the most efficient stuffing machines. They actually generate a lot of heat and are the leading cause for ruining most people's homemade sausage. So a dedicated sausage stuffer, and it doesn't matter the size, is a worthy investment if you're serious about making sausage. It's the one piece of equipment that will immediately level up your sausage. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get our casing together. We are down to the last few tips on how to get an amazing snap from your sausage. And this one right here can make or break the end result. So we've got our casing. It's been in the refrigerator overnight, at least 12 hours. And we're going to put a little bit of water on that horn. That's going to help lubricate it. And water is really all you need. You don't need to use any oil. I have seen people use oil before, and oil can actually hinder the casing from binding to the meat properly. Not saying that it will, but it could cause a problem. And what we're trying to do is minimize any problems. I could guarantee you that water will never cause you a problem. So what we're going to do is put our fingers into that casing, and it should be nice and slippery. We're going to make sure that we put a little bit of water in there. There you go. We got a little water bubble right there. And what that's going to do is that's going to help lubricate that casing as it goes onto the horn. It's going to keep a nice, steady flow of water, which is going to give us a very slippery casing. When you're done, you should be able to slide your casing back and forth without any problems. If you notice that it's sticky, right, if it's not sliding, you can either re-lubricate it or maybe even scale down the size of your horn, because it should be very slippery, and that's going to make stuffing a whole lot easier. And speaking of stuffing, our goal here is to create a plump sausage. We don't want it so packed that it explodes, right? That's too full. We just want to have a nice, firm, plump sausage. So let's get this tied off, and I'm going to show you the technique that I use in order to achieve said sausage. Our casing's tied off at the end, and what we need is a little hole to allow excess air to escape. And there we go. So now we won't create any air bubbles. And although I like to tie my casing off before I start stuffing, you could technically leave it untied and then just do it at the end. All right, so here's the technique. With my right hand, now I'm using an electric sausage stuffer from the sausage maker, so my foot is actually controlling the pedal. So with my right hand, I'm just squeezing on that casing at the very end. And with my left hand, I'm going to be guiding the sausage. Now, if you're not using an electric sausage stuffer, you're going to grab it with your left hand and hold it underneath. And you're going to pinch it with your thumb and your forefinger. And with your right hand, well, that's going to be cranking the sausage stuffer. Now, this applies to right-handed people, so if you're left-handed, you're going to do the opposite of everything I just said. All right, we're going to go nice and easy here. I am very gently pinching the end of that horn with my index finger and my thumb. And the tighter I pinch, the more meat I'm allowing to come into that casing, the tighter my sausage is going to be, basically. And so what I like to do is just with my left hand, check the plumpness, so to speak, of my sausage. If I feel like it's too loose, I'll squeeze a little tighter. If I feel it's too tight, I'll let up a little bit. And this does take a little bit of practice. And what you're looking for is kind of a nice, even, consistent sausage. Not a lot of air pockets. Let's give it a little squeeze right quick. Very good. So it's plump. I'm not overfilling it. Let's give it another squeeze just to kind of see where it's at right here. Check that out. Very, very good. I'm loving the way this is coming out. Now, I'm going to stop right here to give you kind of an indicator, let you know you're on the right track. If you can take your sausage and squeeze it with your index finger and your thumb, and it leaves an indentation, then you're on the right track. But if you try to squeeze it and it feels like it's about to explode, your sausage may be a little on the tight side. And it's not a big deal. Just loosen your grip on the horn, and that's going to loosen up your sausage just a little bit. And what you're looking for is a perfect balance. You don't want it underfilled. You don't want it overfilled. And this is where practice makes perfect. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. All right, so we are at the end of our casing. Let's go ahead and take it off the horn, and it's now time to link our sausage. Now, there's several different techniques that we've used on this channel. What we're going to do here is alternate how we link our sausage. So I'm just going to find a little mark on my tray. That way, each one of my links are fairly consistent, and the size of your link is irrelevant. We have specific buns for our links. That's why we're making ours this size, but you can make them whatever size you want. We're going to go ahead and make our mark and twist that 3 times away from us. That's going to be our first link. And notice we've got a nice plump sausage. This looks amazing. Doesn't have a lot of give. This is perfect. Our next link, we're going to go ahead and mark it, same spot, and we're going to twist that 3 times towards us. And we're just going to alternate how we twist. And I like this particular method because I find that it does give you a nice tight link. But like I said, you could link however you want, and you're still going to end up with a nice snappy bite. How you link will not affect the snappage of your sausage, just letting you know. All right, now we need to talk about pricking your sausage. Now, it is not entirely necessary to prick your sausage. If you don't have any air pockets, you don't technically need to prick your sausage, but I'm giving you tips to give you the absolute best chance for success, and pricking your sausage is one of them. Start by pricking out any air pockets you might have. That's an absolute must. You don't want air pockets. Even if it's just a couple, prick them out. Air pockets prevent the casing from properly adhering to the meat and can create little pockets of rendered fat, which is not a good thing. So if you see any air pockets, and it doesn't matter how big they are, just give them a little prick and you should be good to go. The other thing that I would recommend is once you're done pricking out the air pockets, just give your sausage an overall prick. It doesn't have to be super excessive. By doing this, you are allowing that casing to really adhere properly to the meat, and you're creating very small spaces for some rendered fat to escape, and that's going to keep it from pulling inside your sausage. Now this needs to rest in the fridge overnight so the cure can do its job. If you're making a sausage without cure, or if you're making a sausage with a cure accelerator, you do not need to let this rest overnight in the refrigerator. But because we are using a cure, this is going to go into the fridge overnight, and tomorrow this is what it's going to look like. Notice that it's slightly dried out a bit, and it's time to cook our sausage. We're going to be using a Smokin' It smoker to cook our sausage here, and I'm just going to place them on these sausage racks. Now, you can just as easily lay them flat on your barbecue pit or your offset, not a big deal. But the key word here is gentle cooking. We're going to be cooking these nice and gently. We do not want to blast them with a whole lot of heat. So on a rack they go. And we'll separate them once they go into our smoker, but we do want a little bit of space between each one of those links. We're hanging those 2 down, and I'm just going to go ahead and fill the rest of this bar up with sausage as we put it into our smoker. And this is what everything looks like, completely finished, 30 pounds into the smoker. We've got sufficient space front to back, and notice we don't have a lot of space between the sausage, but you don't need a lot of space. You just want a little bit of space for airflow and for smoke penetration. And I want you to notice how our sausages are glistening. That moisture is condensation that's been formed on our sausage after we took it out of the refrigerator. That condensation, if we cook our sausage right now, is going to cause our casing to be chewy, a little on the rubbery side. And it could cause the casing to separate from the meat. We don't want that. So the first thing we want to do is dry our sausage out. This is arguably the most critical step in this entire process. We want that casing to be glued to that meat. And so what we're going to do is just put a small fan in front of it. Now, you don't need a fan. You can technically, if you have a digital smoker, you could put it on, 90 or 100 degrees and let it hang out in there for an hour and a half. But putting a fan in front of it speeds this process up greatly. Look at this. In just short of 20 minutes, our casings are perfectly dry. No moisture on them whatsoever. And they've actually changed in color. They've gotten a bit darker back here in the back. Let's give it a little feel. What's going on? Yep, not a problem. Everything is dry. Perfect. Now it's time to cook our sausage. And the name of the game here is gentle cooking. We don't want to come at it with too much heat too quick because that's going to render out the fat. It could cause the casing to rupture. And so if you're going to be cooking it in a digital smoker, start low, gradually increase the temperature. If you're cooking on a pit or an offset, you can cook on indirect heat, which is going to help crisp up that casing. If you're cooking in an oven, just make sure the temperature is not too hot. 225 to 275. And then also if you're cooking on a skillet or a griddle, just make sure the temperature is on a medium low. It should be fine. Since this is a smoked sausage, we're firing up our Bella's cold smoke generator from Smokin' It Smokers. As far as the wood goes, you could use whatever wood you like. Hickory, mesquite work. I personally like oak. A little combination of oak and pecan is always nice. And so that's what we have right here. We're going to close this smoker down and let it do its thing.
While our sausages are cooking, let's talk about this one particular issue that you're definitely going to want to be aware of. When it comes time to cook your sausage, don't overload your smoker or your barbecue pit. You definitely want to know the limitations of whatever you're using to cook your sausages. I'm using a Model 4D from Smokin' It Smoker, and we can comfortably put 25 pounds. We have 30 pounds in there right now, and we're kind of pushing it. The reason you don't want to overload these units is because the moment you add all that sausage to it, the liquid that you added to the recipe is going to begin to evaporate. And that evaporated liquid, depending on the model of smoker or pit you have, is going to collect inside that unit. Now, if you have a lot of good airflow, you're probably not going to have this problem. But if you don't have a lot of good airflow, that humidity is going to build up in such a way that it's going to cause your sausages to sweat. And what's going to happen is as they continue to cook and that liquid sits on the outside of your sausage, that liquid is in essence going to cause that casing to turn chewy and rubbery. It's going to be slightly steamed, so to speak. So how do you fix this if you've overloaded your smoker? Well, about 2 hours into the cook, open up your door and see if your sausages are sweating. If they're sweating, that means there's too much humidity built up inside your smoker. We need to get that humidity out of there and we need to dry the sausages. So leave the door ajar, maybe 6 inches. Leave the temperature exactly where it's at and let that humidity escape. And in about 10 to 15 minutes, those sausages are going to dry out. Once that happens, you can close the door and you should be good to go. And if you've followed all the steps before this, you should end up with a nice snappy sausage. Let's go take a peek at ours. They should be done cooking. I can't wait to taste them.
We are in the final step of this entire process, and I'm glad you stuck with me. Don't forget to give this video a great big thumbs up if you like this type of content. Look at those Texas hot links. We need to cool them down. Otherwise, that casing is going to start to shrivel up. Now, here is another little tip that you can use to get a snappy casing. If you're going to be using ice in your water to cool off your sausages, which is totally okay, just don't let your sausages sit in that ice water for too long. It could firm up the casing so much that will actually turn into a chewy casing, and you definitely don't want to do that. So you only want your sausages in there just enough to where you cool them below about 100 degrees, maybe 90 degrees, and then go ahead and take them out. And this is what our sausages look like. I mean, they look absolutely brilliant. They smell incredible. They look incredible. There's a plumpness to them that I just can't wait to dive into. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to let these sausages bloom. And at this point, everything that could be done has been done to achieve a snappy casing. All that's left to do is to heat that sausage up and see how we did. And that's what we got going on right here. Now, I just reheated these in the oven 225 degrees until the internal was about 150. And just check out this sausage. The skin is nice and tight, perfectly adhered to the meat. There are no fat pockets that are separating the meat. Everything looks exactly the way that it should.
All right, guys, we've got our Texas hot link. It looks absolutely amazing. And let's just give it a bite. Wow, these sausages came out incredible. Beautiful snap, incredible flavor. And although the snappiness of a sausage doesn't influence the flavor, it certainly elevates the experience. And what I love about sausage making is that achieving results like this isn't a matter of luck, it's a matter of technique. And if you follow every step that we've outlined in this video, practice good technique from beginning to end, you're going to end up with the exact same results. And I can't wait to hear about it. Now, if you are still having a very difficult time achieving a nice snappy bite, be sure to leave me a comment in the comment section below. We'll try to figure it out together. Thanks a lot for being here. If you like this video or got something out of it, a great big thumbs up always encourages me to make more videos just like this. And if you're new to sausage making and you want to level up your sausage making game, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, because we take you beyond the recipe to help you become a better sausage maker. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.